Hey everybody, this is Pooka bringing you another game I played on the program PlayTCG. I did stream these games a little while ago. Played against some people that were just viewing the stream. Just picked some people out of the chat and just played some fun games. And just tried to, get some new games with the new sets. So here I have more of a fun deck than anything. It can work, but it's not really that serious. It's a Mew Accelgor Vileplume deck. And it also features Dodrio and Chinchino, the smooth coat one. So, looks like my opponent did mulligan. And I saw a bunch of fighting energy and like max potion, I think. So this is actually a straight Donphan deck. Now, of course, this deck would be built to counter stuff like Darkrai and Zekrom Electric, and there we do see a Donphan and a Rocky Helmet. So, you can see what this deck is all about. It's just Donphan and Donphan. Ever since the solo Terrakion deck performed well at States, these sort of decks kind of popped up more and more, which is kind of weird, but I mean, more and more people are just saying, hey, this one Pokemon, I could build a deck around that, right? And then they just kind of go with it. So far I've seen a deck with just Donphan. I've seen a deck with just Terrakion. I've seen a deck with just Groudon EX. I've seen a deck with just Entei EX. I've seen a deck with just Darkrai EX. So I've seen just about every variation of I'm going to run 4 of this thing and go with it. So this one will be Donphan. But one thing these decks all have in common is that they are horrendous against trainer lock decks. You only have 4 Pokemon in your whole deck, which means you have about 40 trainers in your deck. Now, when Vileplume comes out, you can't play the trainers. So, Vileplume does very well, and normally Vileplume goes along with some other strange aspect. Like in this deck, it'll be Paralysis. Actually, normally Vileplume does go with Paralysis these days. Either Lilligant or Vanillux are the normal ones. Accelgor, of course, does that as well with deck and cover. And I guess the other use for Vileplume nowadays would be like the Truth with the Reuniclus, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside by now. So right now we do see my opponent played a random receiver, got a Juniper from that, and played a heavy ball for a Donphan, so I'm well aware what this deck is. It's just Donphan, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable about it. The only question is, am I going to be able to set up? So the neat thing about playing against these quad Pokemon deck is that, well, once you knock out all 4 of them, you won the game. They actually can't get them back because you play Vileplume. So normally they rely on stuff like Revive to get them back from the discard pile. But when you have Vileplume, they can't play Revive, and everything is hunky-dory. So right now I will play a Pokemon Collector. Still very good in these Vileplume decks. And I'm going to go ahead and search for another Oddish. I did draw one for my turn. Now you can get a good look at the whole deck. The objective of the deck is to use either Relicanth or Mew, put an Accelgor into the Lost Zone, and then keep using deck and cover, infinitely paralyze your opponent, and when you finally knock something out, you want to promote Chinchino with Smooth Coat, because if you flip heads, they can't damage you, and it just makes it extremely annoying for your opponent to actually get anywhere. So, kind of a fun deck, because it doesn't really work that well, but we'll see how it goes here. I think if it had any shot of working, it would be against a deck like this. So we're going to find out together, does this deck actually work? So I just grab another Oddish, a Mew, and a Pichu, and I decide to try to put that in the Lost Zone. I just put the Pichu in there. I grabbed that. That was probably the most worthless card in my deck still. So I needed something to put in the Lost Zone. Didn't want to put an energy or the Doduo or a supporter, so I just grabbed a Pichu to do that. So if I really want to, I can still use Playground with a Mew, because now that Mew's lost Link Pokebody, and then we take a look at the Chin-Chin of the smooth coat there for a second. That's what it's used for here. But Mew allows you to use the attack of any Pokemon in the Lost Zone. So, once Pichu's in there, I could use Playground if I really wanted to. If I really get desperate, I can use Playground. So here is a Ruins of Alph, not really going to have any use here, and a Copycat. So all of those mulligans he had, it's really going to benefit him. He's going to Copycat for a whopping 9 cards. But I'm actually fine with that, because the other thing I worried about was a N, because that would shuffle my hand in. But now, I get to keep my twins. He'll probably get a Donphan, take a knockout, and I can twins grab myself a rare candy and a Vileplume, and we will be all good. You see the mighty Donphan himself. That exoskeleton Pokebody is going to be pretty annoying, considering Deck and Cover does a very low amount of damage, only does 50. So that'll reduce it to 30, which, that's not very much. The annoying part about this deck is that, sure, you can use Deck and Cover. You instantly paralyze and poison your opponent, but you have to shuffle the Pokemon back into your deck, which means you can't just keep using it over and over. You have to keep getting it back. And when you have to keep getting it back, you also have to keep getting the energy back. So, it's not as simple as, alright, Deck and Cover every turn, like you would see with the Vanillix deck, where you just use Double Freeze every turn. No, you have to actively search out for these cards over and over. You replace the risk of the flips with the risk of not drawing your energy or your Pokemon. So it's a big trade-off here. And we're going to see if it actually works. So right now, my opponent does get a knockout. I will promote good old Mew, because it has a free retreat cost. And then I'm just going to go ahead and search for a rare candy and a Vileplume, because I need to shut off trainers as soon as possible. You can see I don't really play many trainers, you know, just a couple rare candy and Pokemon communication. It's by design. You don't want to clog your hand knowing that you play Vileplume. You can still play supporters, of course. Those are not normally trainers. I guess Vileplume should be kind of clarified to mean items nowadays. But this turn I'm just going to sacrifice a Mew in order to see off for my Accelgor. And my opponent's saying had to be a Vileplume deck, huh? And yep, that's the problem with these straight Donphan or straight Terrakion decks. They counter fighting weak decks pretty well, but when you face anything else, you don't have a very good time. So there we have Accelgor, Deck and Cover. Automatically paralyzes and poisons your opponent, and then you shuffle the Pokemon back in your deck with all the attached cards. So that's going to be the point of the deck. You have Vileplume in play to prevent any sort of cards like Switch, Life Herb, Full Heal from curing the special conditions, and you essentially just lock your opponent in place. That's all there is to it. And we're going to see if I can pull off Deck and Cover enough times to win the game. Now at this point, decks like these also do not play Pokemon Collector. They don't play any supporter-based searching cards. So it's going to be tough for my opponent to find extra fan piece to get into play as well. So really, I could just knock out these 2 Donphans and the game could end. That's the power of Trainer Lock, especially now that decks rely more and more on trainers. But that's just the way it is. So this turn, I promote my Relicanth. It does have a 2 retreat cost, but this is why I play Mr. Dodrio. Gives you 2 less retreat, and that will make pretty much everything in my deck have a free retreat cost. So I'll get my Dodrio and a Mew. I'll be able to retreat Relicanth and use Mew, which will copy Accelgor's Deck and Cover. It'll do 30 and paralyze. I debate putting down a Smeargle, but I decide against it because it's probably not worth the bench space at this point. Just going to go ahead and retreat to the Mew. Now, like I said earlier, it's only going to do 30 damage, which is annoying. But it will poison and paralyze my opponent. So I'll go ahead and shuffle Mew back in. Promote Relicanth. Doesn't really matter what I promote as long as it's not Dodrio. Because, well, Dodrio does not give itself free retreat, unfortunately. And my opponent says it's 50, right? And then he says can't see the card, and I realize, oh. Apparently you can't see the card if part of it's on your opponent's field. But he is paralyzed and poisoned, so he'll take 10 in between turns. He cannot attack or retreat. Not that Donphan would retreat anyway. But basically it's just stuck there to do nothing. And unless my opponent plays Unknown Cure, which is very, very unlikely. And then we have a nice look at Relicanth there. Unless my opponent plays Unknown Cure, there is no way out of this. There is really no way to get your Pokemon out of being paralyzed when there's Trainer Lock out there. There's just Unknown Cure, and if your opponent had an Espeon in play, that might prevent paralysis. That's one way. And the third way would be something like Machamp Prime with Fighting Tag could replace your active. But in a straight Donphan deck, none of these tricks exist. Which is why it's so bad against Trainer Lock decks. And nobody really plays Trainer Lock decks, but when they do, you just kind of lose to them. Even if they're Accelgor. So I will Collector, get my Minccino, and a couple of Mews. So I'll be able... Well, actually, I have a weird decision here. Relicanth actually is decent against Donphan. Granite Head does 30 for 3. And reduces all damage by 30 next turn. So an Earthquake would do 30 to me, and I would do 30 to Donphan. And then it would keep getting poisoned. So I'm going to go ahead and use Granite Head for a whopping 40 damage, sorry, due to the weakness. So it would be 30 times 2, making that 60, minus 20 for the Exoskeleton. Brings it down to 40 damage, but, yeah, go Relicanth, Granite Head. When's the last time you saw Relicanth attack somebody? So now my opponent does have, well, he doesn't really have any decisions to make. That's the silly part about this. All he can really do is attach energy and attack. He's limited to using Earthquake for 30, thanks to Granite Head, which he will do. And now he will have 10 hit points left. So he'll take the 10 from poison. It'll be my turn. He should be at 110 damage right now. And this is the turn where I'm just going to evolve to my Cinccino and retreat. Because, well, he's going to be knocked out by poison. And I can promote this guy. And then if I flip heads when he attacks, I will take no damage. So, everything somehow is going according to plan. I didn't even give up many prizes before I set up, which is strange. Usually it takes a little bit for this deck to set up, but I only fell behind 2 prizes, and I'm completely set up. I got the Accelgor and the Lost Zone, I got the Dodrio, the Cinccino, and the Vileplume. I even have a Relicanth powered up, so I'm feeling great about my position. My opponent says I love your deck, but I'm also terrified of it. And I'm just going to pass. And now it's going to be up to my opponent to try to get through the smooth coat. For some reason, a very smooth coat stops all Pokemon in their tracks and says, "Oh, that's too nice. I don't want to knock that out." So he takes no damage when you flip heads, but only half the time. Sometimes they're like, "I could care less about your coat." And then the other amount of the time, they're just like, "That's too cute. I wouldn't want to put a finger on that." So we'll see what kind of a guy Donphan really is. Does he care about fashion? Does he care about the smooth coat? Or will he just kind of charge through anyway? So my opponent says heavy impact, and we go for a smooth coat, and it's heads. So Donphan decides, nah, I'd rather not hurt you. And that's cool with me. So I'm going to go ahead and retreat now, because I have free retreat thanks to Dodrio. I did draw a double colorless. That was a nice top deck there. And I can deck and cover once again, so that'll poison and paralyze my opponent. There we go. Return Mew to the deck. Promote the Chinchino, doesn't really matter though. My opponent really could not attack me no matter what happened. He is paralyzed. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about my spot. I mean, I've already knocked out one Donphan. This second one's going to get knocked out, no doubt about it. Next turn I'll just retreat, deck and cover again to paralyze him again, and I can finish him off with Granite Head, thanks to Relicanth. And that's really going to be all she wrote, I think, for my opponent. As long as I can knock out that last Donphan. I really only have 2 more to go. My opponent's not going to take a prize anytime soon, I don't think. I don't know, we'll see. Very unlikely that my opponent even takes another prize. Especially with the way I'm flipping heads on Smooth Coat. So right here I have a decision to make. I could retreat and use Granite Head, or I can retreat and use Deck and Cover. I will just go ahead and play a Collector. Let's thin out my deck a little bit. Grab whatever basics I can. Looks like the only 3 left are... Oh, actually there's 4 basics in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take a Minccino, Smeargle, and Mew. Put down another Mew. The annoying thing about this, of course, is that you have to keep replacing your Mew every time you use Deck and Cover. This is what I think holds the deck back big time. Makes it way too difficult to get anything done. So I'm going to go ahead and Deck and Cover. Throw that Mew back in the deck. And promote Chinchino just because I can. And I'll shuffle the deck, I think. And at this point, I mean, I can do pretty much whatever I want. I can retreat and Granite Head next turn, because my opponent's only option is going to be Earthquake, which would not knock out Relicanth after I used Granite Head. And like I said, I don't see my opponent actually taking another prize this game. I'll put down another Mew, of course. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and use my N while I can. My opponent did just play a Juniper. And I'm about to take another prize, so I want my N to be useful. I want to draw 5 cards while I still can. Did not get an energy, unfortunately. It's one of the few things that's gone wrong for me this game. An energy would have been very nice, because I would have prepared for another Deck and Cover next turn. But that's okay. Just going to promote Relicanth and Granite Head. And get a knockout on Donphan. Alternatively, I could have just promoted the Chinchino. I mean, it really doesn't matter what I do at this point, I don't think. I actually could have promoted Vileplume and just passed. Poison would have knocked him out before my next turn, and I would have been able to retreat the Vileplume. So, really doesn't matter what I do at this point, as long as I eventually knock out that Donphan. There should be 1 more Donphan left at most. And the Donphan deck really relies on cards like Max Potion and Catcher and Junk Arm and Lost Remover and all these other trainers, which you just can't really use anymore. And this is still the power of Vileplume. You know, everybody says, no, Vileplume's dead. It's too slow, but when you manage to get it into play, it's actually a very powerful card still. Most decks nowadays run like 30 trainers in their deck, which actually isn't even an exaggeration. When I say trainers, I mean items. Stuff like Junk Arm, Catcher, Dual Ball, Level Ball, Ultra Ball, Dark Patch. All of these things are just items that are shut off when Vileplume comes out. So Vileplume is still a really devastating card. It's just a matter of, well, is there anything I can use with it that's worth using? And am I going to be able to get it out quickly enough? Most of the time the answer is no, but oh well. So now my opponent can do nothing but pass. He's going to take some more poison damage. I want to play an Oak's New Theory and remind him about poison damage. I'm hoping for a double colorless, of course, so I can use deck and cover once again. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to retreat to a Vileplume and pass, or just leave my Chinchino up there. So I can just pass, go for Smooth Coat, or I can retreat to Vileplume and just kind of make sure I don't get knocked out. And yeah, go Vileplume. Woo! A lot of weird stuff happened in this game. I'm attacking with Relicanth. I'm shoving a Vileplume in my active position to pass. We're using deck and cover. There's a Pichu in the Lost Zone. Smooth Coat is going all the way. And I think Accelgor is going to have a big victory here. I don't know what my opponent can do. He's no longer paralyzed, so he could Earthquake. But what's going to happen is he can Earthquake, and I can retreat and Granite Head for the win. You heard that, folks. Granite Head for the win. Go Relicanth. Knocking out Donphans like it's nobody's business. So he attaches another fighting. Contemplates his turn. I'm sure he has a handful of items that he cannot use. And he says, I'm going to use Psychic Restore. Good game. For those of you who don't know what Psychic Restore was, it was Uxie, which the attack allowed you to put him to the bottom of the deck. So that's what's going on here, apparently. But I'm just going to promote Relicanth to let my opponent know, no, you did not do that. Relicanth sent you to the discard pile. So that's going to be the game. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed my fun little deck here. Accelgor, Vileplume, Dodrio, Chinchino, Mew, Relicanth, Pichu, etc. It's a fun deck. I don't know how competitive it really is, but if you're looking for a cool deck to play, maybe know your opponents to death, this one's for you. So thanks everybody for watching. Hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time. I've been Pooka here on the Top Cut.